Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another YouTube video. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing the power of journaling. Now, as somebody that has been journaling for about a year and a half consistently, right, I'm going to be discussing some of the benefits of why you should journal and how it could ultimately change your life. Now, to give some context, before I started journaling, I felt very lost in terms of kind of discovering who I was. I didn't really know why I was repeating certain emotions, and I didn't really understand what I wanted to accomplish in my life, and all these different things, right? But by being able to pick up my first journal, which is actually the one I just showed you guys, by being able to start journaling, I was able to really start to actually discover myself. Now, I have one, two, three, four, five, and then one more. So six journals that I've actually completed. And by being able to journal consistently for about a year and a half, I truly believe that I've actually been able to truly understand myself completely, right? And the way that I've been able to do that by journaling is I would actually ask myself a lot of different questions, right? Such as, what are my dreams? What are things that I want to accomplish before this certain, date? Or what makes me unique, right? All these different questions that would just come to my mind, and I would always record, every single day. I would try to just ask myself a new question and then be able to self-reflect on it. And sometimes I would journal in silence for about 20 minutes to 40 minutes, right? Whenever I had time for the day. And sometimes it would be in the morning, sometimes it would be in the afternoon, sometimes it would be at nighttime. But by being able to just take a little bit of time out of my day to sit with myself and just think, right? That ultimately is how I'm able to self discover myself and really feel like I have a better sense of who even am I, right? And in addition to that specific activity of just asking a question and then responding to kind of get a sense of who you are, there's also multiple different other ways that you can journal itself. And so the second one is you can also record how your day was, right? And be able to kind of capture specific memories that maybe you don't want to forget. And one of the beauties of being able to journal that's maybe different than taking like a photo and having a record of that is that the practice of journaling really taps into the emotions that you're actually feeling, right, on certain specific days that you can't really capture with the photo itself, you know? And an example of this is, let's say you give somebody a photo, right, of a great experience that you had. They're not necessarily going to feel the same exact emotions that you felt on that specific day when you took that photo. But if you show somebody a journal, right, of an entry that you did about an experience that, made you feel a very certain way, well, if you show it to them, right, let's just use this as an example. If you show it to them, then they can really get a sense of, the what was actually happening on that day. They can get a sense of the emotions, all these different things. So I kind of like to think of journaling as like being able to record your past, right? And I think there's a lot of beauty in that. I think there's a lot of beauty in being able to, flip a journal and looking at, what you were experiencing on that specific day, and then maybe also looking at it from a lens of like you can actually see your progress, throughout a year based off of the journal entries that you have done. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to journal, and I'm obviously not here to tell you which one is the best one. I truly believe that whatever makes sense for you is the way that you should go about it. And so there's another activity that I really want to share with you guys that I have been using in regards to like my practice of journaling that I think may be beneficial to you guys, right? So I have been writing my journal entries with a gratitude section at the very top of it, right? So I'll write the date, and then right underneath the date, I will write the word, gratitude. And then I'll take some time to really just think about what am I grateful for today, And I feel like by just doing that small little activity, you're already setting the tone for your day. You're aligning your mind in a positive direction. And, I'll take like 5 minutes to just sit in silence and just think about all the things I'm grateful for, right? And then below that specific section, and then what I do is I will think about like my dreams and my goals and all the things that I want to accomplish, and I actually write in the present tense as if I'm already accomplishing those dreams and goals. And you may think that's like a little crazy. You may be like, "What? Why would he, do that?" Right? But I do that because if I can write it out that I'm already accomplishing my dreams and my goals, then I feel like I'm already aligning myself with becoming that person. And so, an example of this is, let's say, let's use money for an example, right? So I want to be a multimillionaire. So in my journal, I will write, I am a multimillionaire. And it feels so good looking into my bank account and seeing millions and millions of dollars, right? So that's just a very specific example. But I do that activity because if I do it long enough, right? Let's say I do it for the next 6 months, or a year, or 2 years, or 3 years, right? Eventually, I truly believe that I will actually have $1 million, right? Or millions of dollars, because I'm kind of manifesting and I'm kind of reaffirming that that is exactly what I want and that is exactly who I aspire to be and that I am. So that's another journaling activity that can be applied to, pretty much anything outside of just the idea of money. But let's say you want to be somebody that's like famous on YouTube, right? You can start writing in your journals as if in the present tense of you having millions and millions of subscribers on your YouTube channel, right? So what you would write is I am a YouTuber that has 5.6 million subscribers on X channel, And then if you do that every day, then chances are you probably will have 5.6 million subscribers on your YouTube channel. So, yeah, that's just an idea for another way that you could journal, but I truly recommend that you guys actually go and buy a journal if you don't have one. And just start self-reflecting if you feel like you're a little lost in terms of trying to discover who you are. And yeah, just try to, get into a habit of asking yourself a question every single day in your journal to kind of self-discover, right? Parts of you that maybe you haven't even really tapped into. Journaling, honestly, has transformed my life, and by being somebody that's more introspective and gets a better understanding of who I am, I'm able to just feel more secure from within, right? And in addition to that, sometimes in my journals, I'll also record information that I don't want to forget. And by doing the act of writing information itself, it helps me memorize it a lot longer, right, in my mind compared to if I just hear it and it kind of just tends to go through one ear. It stays up in my brain for just a little bit and then, kind of just goes out and then I forget and then I'll have to rewatch a video. But yeah, if you write down information in your journal that you don't want to forget, then chances are you probably won't forget it for a very, very long time. Or at least you can, go back in your journal and reference it. And that's the same with memories. If you don't want to forget a very specific memory, then write it down in your journal. And in 6 months, you're going to be looking back at your journal and you're going to go, holy crap, that happened on that specific day, right? So I think that's really cool. I think that's really interesting. It's like you're recording your own story on a piece of paper. And in addition to that, you can also think of it as, let's say you want to tell your kids or give your kids or your future family kind of an insight of who you were when you were, a very specific age. Well, if you start journaling now, right, you can eventually in the future, right, you can show your kids a record of what it was like for you when you were this age. And yeah, I think that would just be awesome, right? To be able to pass down memories that you have written out to your future kids and be able to, yeah, have it for them to read, right? And there's also things that I do in my journals, like I'll write my future kids like a memo, right, of like what it's like to be 23 years old and out of college, right? Like I literally did that probably 2 weeks ago, and yeah, that's going to be something that they can read and kind of get an insight of what it was like for me, right? So yeah, if you guys think that journaling is weird, then maybe just reconsider what your thoughts ultimately are. And it's only weird probably just because you haven't tried it, right? And to be honest with you guys, I actually probably did think that journaling was a little weird at first, before I started journaling, right? There would be people that would be writing in a book, and I would just be like, oh man, like that person, you know, seems like a loser, But once I actually started doing it, I genuinely just started to notice changes in my life that have truly been beneficial. Now, I'm going to share something with you guys that is very important to consider when you're journaling, which is try not to journal negative stuff, right? Because chances are, if you're writing about negative stuff, then you're going to stay in the past, right? And I'll give you guys an example, right? So, my first journal that I have, this one right here, right? This is just full of a lot of negative shit, right? But I didn't know how to journal. So I just kind of thought that if I'm, writing all the negative stuff, then ultimately that's a good thing. Now, I guess there are aspects of it that may be good, but I realized it was very unhealthy, right? When you're always living in the past and you're just recollecting old memories that don't longer, serve you, such as like, maybe a heartbreak or, ultimately whatever, right? But if you're always living in the past, then you don't really have room for the future. So I highly recommend also that when you're journaling, that you just really focus on writing good things, right? But it's okay every now and then to maybe reflect on a bad day and kind of, ask yourself why. But I wouldn't always ask yourself questions that pertain to like negative experiences, unless it's for the sake of like self-discovering who you are, right? And if you notice that maybe you are repeating the same kind of journal entries like every single day that maybe are like not very positive, then maybe take some time to just self-reflect and think about why you think you're doing that, right? And then also, yeah, the another beautiful thing about journaling is that you can ultimately be very, very creative, right? So this journal, I don't know if you guys can see it. My camera is kind of shit, but this journal, I called it the road less traveled, right? And in here, there's a whole bunch of journal entries that I've done in regards to why I feel like I'm on a very specific path that nobody else is on. So that's why it is called the road less traveled. And yeah, you guys can just be as creative as you want. There's no limitations when it comes to journaling, but if you do journal, your life would be very, very, very different. Let's see if I have any more with titles. Nope. Um, but yeah, a lot of cool stuff. So yeah, definitely give it a try. And maybe you are somebody that does journal, and maybe that's why you actually clicked on this video. And if you do journal, I would love to hear why you journal and how it has ultimately helped you become a better person. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and hitting the bell icon, subscribing, and leaving a comment. I would love to hear your guys' input and feedback on your thoughts on journaling itself. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And this is Tom. Peace out.